Hey, everybody. I am joined today by the illustrious David Katz, precocious polymath that he is. Now, David stands a little bit on the other side of certain questions, which we have dealt with in other episodes um, in our show here about transhumanism and the questions of aging and so forth. And we're going to discuss those controversies subsequently. But before we have any of that kind of discussion, David has a presentation for us about certain initiatives in which he's involved. And I'm just going to hand it over to him. If you want to make any other additional introductory remarks, uh, Senor, you are, of course, welcome to do so.
Okay, can you let me share my screen?
Uh, I can give me a second. I've never actually done that, so let me just figure that out quickly. Forgive my
It's okay.
ineptitude in that connection. I'm guessing. Trying to see how I do that. Hold on a second here. Thank you for your patience. It's not there. This is embarrassing.
Yeah, no worries, no rush.
Oh, here we go. Wow. This is no, that'll do it. Allowed you to share the whiteboard. I don't know if that's sufficient for your purposes. Can you do it yet?
No.
Hold on. Just try and give you as many permissions as I could figure out how to share screen right under my nose. There we go. I think you should be able to do it
All
now.
right. Yep, I got it.
Cool. All right. We are underway.
Okay, you see my screen? You hear me okay?
Oh, yes, I do.
All right, so I'm going to start with the big question. Why do we age? Aging is the increasing probability of death from internal causes. And everyone might be accustomed to it, but it's actually the biggest open problem in biology. Why do we age? Why do chronologically old organisms have a higher chance of mortality than chronologically young organisms? Human bodies, organisms in general, have the ability to repair themselves, and they could keep on repairing themselves indefinitely. So I have a little picture of the dog. He's got a little wound, and he's repairing himself, and his body could keep on repairing himself indefinitely, and you could get stronger and hardier with each passing year, just like these sequoia trees, which live for thousands and thousands of years. But that's not what happens. Most organisms age. So most survival curves, like on the x-axis here, you have time, and then the y-axis is the percentage of the population that is still around. Most of the survival curves for mammals look like this concave down curve right here, type 1 survival curves. But not all mammals. Over here in the Cincinnati Zoo, we have naked mole rats, for example, that have more like a type 2 survival curve. So there's a lot of evidence that they don't age. Death affects the young ones just as much as it does the old ones. Every naked mole rat has about a 4% probability of death every year, and it doesn't change whether they're depending on their chronological age. So why do we age? It was a big open question in biology, and there's a lot of debate. Some people say just we don't age, or animals in the wild don't age. For example, this is Kirkwood's famous Nature paper from 2000, where he says that aging is just a phenomena of the lab. He thinks that in the wild, the survival curves look like this curve with the green under it. This is what happens in the wild, but only in the lab and protected like human environments do we actually age. But there's been over 100 years of field studies, and these studies are very hard. You have to follow populations of animals for decades, and you have to keep track. And yes, we confirmed, and most textbooks have survival curves, just like on the right here, and confirming that aging is indeed the #1 cause of death in the wild. If you're following the population of gazelles, and this gazelle was eaten by a lion, you might think, oh, it's external mortality, eaten by a lion, but no, if you follow it closely, it's the older ones that are eaten. They're old, they get slower, they're the back of the pack, and that's why he was killed. So his cause of death is actually aging. Aging is the #1 cause of death in the wild.
So that is still indirectly the case. The point is that the loss of function of the gazelle, which is attributed to the aging process, is what leads to the fact that it is more likely to fall prey to a death, which is still strictly speaking exogenously um, caused, or right.
Yeah, so cause of death is very hard. I work at a hospital. Even, it's a counterfactual question by its very nature. When you say A is the cause of death, you're saying if A happened and the organism died, but if A didn't happen, the organism would not have died or would have died significantly later. So it's counterfactual by its very nature. So even for humans, in the lab, we don't do autopsies, we don't really do cause of death, but even humans, everyone's dropping dead and no one really knows. These cause of death studies in general, we don't know the cause of death of almost all organisms, but all we can say is it's aging. Death affects the chronologically older more than it does the younger. What was your question again?
Well, I was just highlighting that it's really not that significant of a question, but you provide the example of the gazelle, and you yourself noted that if the gazelle is killed by a lion, it's relatively straightforward that the lion is the immediate cause of death. But oftentimes, the gazelles which are more likely to be killed by a lion are the older gazelles who don't necessarily have the swiftness, the agility of their youth with them anymore. And so indirectly, it's the aging which contributes to the probability of them falling prey to the lion. So there, the death is still exogenously as opposed to, internally caused, but proximately
Yeah, the
it's
first
caused.
instinct you have is you want to attribute it to external mortality, but I'm trying to tell you not to. I'm saying the lion was aging. I'm going to get into my hypothesis that its body was destroying itself. He would have died anyways, and it was the aging, the fact that he happened to get eaten by a lion. That's, we should attribute the cause of death to aging, not the external mortality.
Anyway, I didn't mean to throw you off the rail
No,
of your
no, no,
thought there,
please. Yeah,
Sandy.
no, please ask any questions you have that come to mind. Yeah, and this picture right here is from Peter Litsky's talk. So this was from the Curing Aging conference back in April, Curing Aging 2023, and he goes into how most textbooks have this type 1 survival curves for mammals. So yeah, excellent talk, and you can see it on the YouTube channel at Curing Aging. And more information about the Curing Aging conference at curing-aging.com.
Yeah, I watched his talk a little earlier.
Oh.
He believes that death and aging are adaptive mechanisms to try and clear out pathogens which might reside in older members of the population.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, he thinks it's a pathogen control mechanism. Yeah, the whole conference is so we assume, we take the stand that aging does occur in the wild, #1 cause of death in the wild, but it's also it's the hypothesis is that aging is an adaptation. Aging is an adaptation theory. Aging was selected for. So, on this slide here, this is supposed to be, this is an image from the next YouTube video I'm making. So I make these little animated YouTube videos in addition to having this conference. So this is supposed to be Charles Darwin. And, Darwin's great observation, he looked at the worms and he said the worms are well suited for their environment. The dirt and the fish are well suited for their environment. The seas. And it's not just a coincidence. The characteristics of organisms are, in fact, adaptations to their environment. And aging, one of the most omnipresent characteristics of biological life, is no exception to Darwin's observation. Aging is an adaptation to the environment. So that is the alternative research hypothesis that the conference is promoting. Aging as an adaptation theory. Yeah, Peter Litsky, then the next question is, what is it an adaptation for? Yeah, two popular answers are, population control, and that's what Josh Middledorf, he's pictured here on the left. He spoke on the first Curing Aging conference, and then Peter Litsky thinks it's a pathogen control. So I'm getting all the researchers that are working on this hypothesis that aging is an active process of self-destruction. It's an adaptation that was selected for by evolution. And Josh here, he spoke that this talk's also on the YouTube channel. He spoke about what convinced him. His so-called epiphany in 1996 was this observation, actually it's over 100 years old now, this observation that if you have rodents and you starve rodents, they live longer. So you restrict the caloric intake to the point at which, we know the level at which they just perish. And then you go just above that and you get incredible life extension, up to 50% life extension. Now, they're not optimized for physical or mental activities. They're going to be very irritable, but you have incredible life extension. And that, is quite remarkable, because anything the body can do with limited resources, it could also do with plentiful resources. And so that was Josh's epiphany and my epiphany, that the body is not trying its best to survive. And this is Weindrich in the picture. And this is one of Weindrich's famous studies, 1986, where he gave mice different amounts of calories, and they noticed these are the survival curves for the different mice, and the ones that are more restricted live longer.
My understanding is that in conjunction with that observation, it is believed that oxidative stress is a significant contribution to the cellular degradation we often associate with the aging process, and that the reason for the extension of life expectancy that comes about consistently when you restrict caloric intake is that you have then lowered the sort of average experience of oxidative stress encountered by the body, because a lot of that stress is a direct outcome of the digestive metabolic processes which we associate with eating.
Yeah, so some people like to highlight, reactive oxygen species. I think in Aubrey de Grey's book, for example, but it's certainly not mainstream. Yeah, I think I certainly disagree with that. Yeah, I don't think, there's a whole big industry. For a while, it was very popular to do these antioxidants, but all evidence is pointing to that, these reactive oxygen species, it does cause damage. However, your body responds to this damage by upregulating repair pathways. So some of it's good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't pretend to know. I just remember hearing a conversation about this. Well, I heard about it in different contexts. It was someone who's sort of is making an argument for fasting as a potentially healthful or salubrious practice in this, but that's really apart from the main thrust of our conversation today. It was just a parenthetical remark.
No, yeah, it's great to bring up that everyone's got their own theories of aging. Yeah, some people think reactive oxygen species or any type of mitochondrial dysfunction are one of the main drivers of aging. But I'm here to present the alternative hypothesis that it's not any type of damage accumulation. It is active self-destruction. You age for the same reason you go through puberty. Aging is built into who you are. So yeah, certainly, I think, yeah, Aubrey de Grey's book made the oxygen species argument, and the fasting reduces the reactive oxygen species, maybe well known, but he would certainly disagree with our hypothesis. But yeah, I'm presenting the alternative hypothesis here.
No, please go on.
Oh yeah,
Please go
yeah.
on. I hope my interruptions have not been
No,
in
please
absence
do.
of
No,
that.
they've been great. And so if I'm presenting the hypothesis that aging is active self-destruction, then the body has to have a clock. There has to be a clock, and the body has to know what time it is in order to be old. It says, now it's time to be old. And everyone, is very well known that there's a circadian clock, that each one of our cells has a 24-hour clock, transcription, translation, feedback loop. But there's also seasonal clocks, circannual clocks. So these are male European hamsters. In this study here, you keep them under constant conditions because you might think that maybe they're just taking cues from the temperature. They're taking cues from the shorter or longer hours of daylight. No, but in constant conditions, they undergo this seasonal change in behavior. So it's a drop in body temperature here during what is winter. Their body temperature drops. What is summer, their body weight increases. It's also their mating season, to their testes size increases. And you have female squirrels, example on the right. This is an actogram. So the more they run on their little wheel, the more black this line is. And this black line is when they were kept in darkness. So presumably they're sleeping. And so they wake up and they're active, and they go to sleep. But during the time when they usually hibernate, that's a period of a little activity. They can sometimes curl up in a ball and just remain inactive for like days, up to 10, 15 days. And even under constant conditions, so they're not taking external cues, they know when it's time to hibernate. So they have a clock. The body knows what time it is, and this is not just a daily clock, but a long-term clock. And everyone, so again, the hypothesis is that aging is active programmed self-destruction, and everyone acknowledges that in semmelper's organisms, like the octopus, these are organisms that die right after reproduction, that aging is active self-destruction. So most people reject it for humans and mammals, but for octopuses, everyone agrees aging is in their programming. So this is a female octopus. She lays her eggs. That's counted as day 0, laying the eggs. And usually around 40 days later, well, she stops eating. So look, her body size, that's what's on the y-axis. Her body size is going down. And when the line stops, each line is an octopus. And when the line stops, she dies. And when you remove the optic glands, these are two little regions in their brain. So this is the normal one. This is the sham operated, and this is when only one of them was removed and they still die. But you remove both of them, little regions of their brain, and they don't die. They don't lose weight, and they just keep on living. And they didn't, this is just when the experiment stopped. So no one knows. There's not enough research going into this. We generally do not know cause of death, as I explained before. No one knows why animals died. We don't even know anything about lifespan. How long do the octopuses live with their optic glands removed? So no one knows these. There's not enough people, researching aging objectively. One of the most important, not only the biggest question in biology, we study life, but no one's researching aging, the end of life, but also, the question with the most, therapeutic potential. So everyone acknowledges that octopuses die because of programmed self-destruction. Everyone acknowledges that the body knows how old it is, and yet it's very strange that they reject this hypothesis that aging is built into our bodies. But that's the research hypothesis that I am advocating. And here's just some more evidence. So when you put a cast on a mouse, the muscle will atrophy. On humans too, all mammals. You cast their limbs and their body will actively destroy their own muscle. So just look at this paper. It shows you which genes get upregulated because of immobility. ATF4 is one of these genes that's upregulated. But this, when you're old, you also lose muscle mass. And it's also due to this same active pathway. If you knock out ATF4 in mice, so this is the ATF4 knockout mice, they don't lose muscle mass, whereas they normally do during aging. So you knock out a gene and they don't lose muscle mass. That shows you that these were active pathways destroying the muscle of the mouse. So the same pathways that atrophy the muscle during when you cast the
Now,
limb.
let me ask you this quick question. This is
Yeah,
just for point of clarification. You say pathway. Do you mean a pathway of genetic expression? So ATF4 represents a particular gene or cluster of genes
it's a gene.
within,
Yep.
it's a gene, and its expression is correlated with apparently the loss of muscle mass. Sarcopenia, is that the word?
Yeah. Very.
Um,
That's
so
right.
it's all right. So
Age-related
sarcopenia is in
loss
the
of muscle mass, sarcopenia. I think it's a new word. Only, if you went to med school before the 70s, you probably would not. You probably wouldn't know that word.
all right. So the thing is that what is the pathway of expression? What do you mean by this? And I'm just asking this definitionally, terminologically, because sometimes I think I do think in certain respects the mechanisms of realization are not trivial, are not trivial.
Yeah, I just mean inputs, a collection of inputs and outputs. This protein leads to this protein, leads to this protein, leads to this protein. That's what I mean by these chemical pathways.
All right. So you're talking about the activation of this gene leads to the production of a series of proteins that apparently act in the body in a manner that is related to the loss of muscle mass.
Yeah, and
All right, so we don't need to be detained by this minor point. I just
no,
so
it's a very good question. This
definitionally
is
clear.
exactly what we need to do is model these pathways. They're very complicated. This protein leads to that protein, hundreds of pathways, hundreds of proteins involved. And yeah, the end result, one of the downstream results of the upstream, transcription of ATF4 is the destruction of the muscle tissue.
Okay. Thank you, David, for that
Yep.
clarification.
And so just more evidence. So the body has a clock and it's time to be old. It sends self-destruction signals throughout the body. It's some evidence that it's actually using the circulatory system to do this is this heterochronic parabiosis. I don't know, Tom, if you've heard about this. For 100 years, people used to get cavities and they noticed as the people, the people that settled down in the cities, they got cavities and they didn't know what caused the cavities. But it's the sugar in your food, and they didn't know what was causing it. So what did scientists do? They took two mice and they sewed them together, and the body just connects your circulatory system when you do this. And they fed one mouse. Oh, they didn't know whether it was the sugar in the bloodstream or is actually the sugar coming in contact with the teeth. And so they sewed the mice together and they gave one mice sugar, the one actually in the teeth, and then they were confirming that the circulatory systems were connected. So the other mice that wasn't fed sugar was getting sugar in its bloodstream, but only the mouse that was fed the sugar got the cavities. That was their big,
Yeah.
end of the debate. They finally knew that it was the contact with sugar on teeth causing the cavities. But you know what else they noticed? They noticed, oh, sometimes the mice, they sold an old mice together with a young mouse. And they, oh my God, the old mouse really lived a lot more time than he would expected to live. And that's when they realized that young blood makes old organisms younger. So there's some active, either something bad in the old blood or something good in the young blood, or probably both. So there's more evidence for, there's active chemical pathways causing this self-destruction. And if you just take out the old blood and put in the young blood, you're interfering with these pathways. So these pathways can be interfered with. And my last, the last example is the nematodes. This example from the C. elegans can show us that all the destruction due to the active chemical pathways can be reversed. Your body already has that ability to reverse that damage. So C. elegans is a little nematode, little transparent nematode. And it lives about 2 days, and it has 4 puberties. It goes through 4 larval stages. However, during the first larval stage, if it senses in an adverse environment, it goes into a state of diapause. Just like, during embryogenesis, some, fertilized eggs can go into embryonic diapause for mammals. So if the little worm is too crowded, or it's too hot, or it's too cold, or it's starved, it will go into this state of diapause. So it usually lives 2 weeks, but can last into this state. Diapause is like inactivity and non-development. It can last it's called the dour state. It can last in the dour state for, I think, up to 2 months. So many times its normal lifespan. So in this experiment, they had a 50% increase with some starvation regimens of the C. elegans. So look at the effect of starvation had on the survival curves. And one of the hallmarks of aging in the C. elegans is mitochondrial fragmentation. So this is on day 1. So they usually live like 15, 20 days. On day 1 of the adult C. elegans, this is what its mitochondria looks like. In day 10, it's already close to old age. Its mitochondria is all fragmented. So this doesn't happen in mammals, but in C. elegans, this is one of the hallmarks of aging. And then if you starve it during L1, the L1 development, this is just like day 1 in the normal development. Its mitochondria looks okay, but as it's in diapause, the mitochondria begins to fragment. So it is aging in this dour state. But if then you start feeding it, it exits the dour state and undergoes its normal life course. And what happens to the mitochondria? The mitochondria gets rejuvenated, and it looks exactly like it did on day 1. So this is a hallmark of aging that is reversed. So this is some evidence that the body already has the ability to repair the damage it inflicted on itself through its active self-destruction pathways. And thus, research efforts should be focused on tricking the body into thinking it's young. So now all research programs, as far as I know, all research programs are focused on clearing damage at the cellular or molecular level. And this is very hard. It's important research, but it's very hard, and it might not be necessary. The body has a clock, and we should have some research focused on figuring out how the clock works and how we can turn back the clock, trick the body into thinking it's younger, and then, just like in the C. elegans exiting the dour stage, the body might then, once it's young, it might already have the ability to repair any damage that it had inflicted with the aging process. So we live in exciting times. There's literally so many advances in biotech happening every day. And with enough prioritization, I think that we can be the last generation born on the clock. And that's the motto of the conference. Thank you so much for listening. And more information can be found at curing-aging.com.
Thank you, David. And I'll put that link in the description of the video and so forth.
Okay.
So, um, I'm trying to find out how to. Maybe you have to unshare your screen. I don't know.
I'll stop the share.
Yeah. Um, I was just listening to you, you're consider. I mean, I'm actually not. I'm actually, as far as I'm actually sympathetic with the bare hypothesis that aging is something which is intrinsic to our life, and so insofar as I'm sympathetic with that characterization, uh, I would then, by extension, be sympathetic with the notion that aspects of that process will find reflection in the constitutive genome of various species and so on and so forth. It does seem plausible that you could be dealing with a phenomenon which is overdetermined, if you like. That is to say that some aging is a consequence of the buildup of damage which simply can't be dealt with by the body over time. It does not actually logically exclude that it is also potentially induced by an internal chronometer of sorts, right? So we could, to a degree, be dealing with both end as opposed to either or situation. So I wonder what you think about that, the fact that these two different approaches are not necessarily mutually exclusive.
You're saying perhaps it is selected for, aging is selected for by evolution as an adaptation, but the mechanism that the body chooses to kill us is to allow the damage to accumulate. So, and then the mainstream thinks it's just the body's trying its best to survive, but damage is accumulating. Whereas I'm saying that it's trying to actively destroy itself, but it's also, it could be that's the mechanism of damage accumulation. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, there's been, again, all research is trying to clear damage, and they've
Right.
done a lot of work, and they've never increased the lifespan. So it seems like whatever damage they clear, the body is still trying to kill itself. So whatever, you regrow the thymus, whatever you do, you give the body some new ability, and it still kills you right on time. So I don't think clearing damage is going to do anything, even if that is one of the mechanisms by which the body destroys itself. We have to trick the body into thinking it's younger. And once it does that, it will clear, if some of the mechanisms it's using to kill the organism are damage accumulation, perhaps it will then start to clear that damage and rejuvenate itself.
What it strikes me is the presumption that this is altogether a negative phenomenon. Is it not possible? I mean, it would be, you know, fatuous would be to pretend like there aren't unfortunate aspects of the aging process, you know, our general loss of real world functionality is broadly acknowledged.
It's one of the worst
Increase
things,
in
worst
pain,
sufferings that could happen to somebody. Yeah.
yeah. So that being granted, being stipulated, I wonder though if that it is a mistake to arrest this process. In this respect, I'm inviting the conversation along a trajectory which is going to go outside of the conventional narrative of most biology as I understand it. But is it not possible that sort of an analogy with the life cycle of a butterfly, where you have the procession to the chrysalis, and then eventually it becomes a butterfly. So there's this series of metamorphoses. Are we not? Are you not perhaps countenancing the possibility that by arresting the development of an organism at a particular point in its lifespan, you are actually arresting it from evolving or developing into something beyond what it is, what we are right now?
Yeah, you're exactly right that, most biologists do not view aging as just a stage of development. They think the developmental program stops at reproductive maturity. But yeah, one of the implications of what I'm saying is that aging is just another stage of development: embryogenesis day 1, day 2, puberty, and aging. It's in our programming. It's just another state of development. Yeah, so I am arresting development. That's exactly what I want to do. It's because this stage of development has exponentially increasing probability of mortality, and we're going to bring it back to a stage that has a very low probability of mortality. So
So
yeah,
I mean, what I'm saying then is that it might in fact be a very serious mistake to avoid death, to put it bluntly.
you're saying that if evolution, most biologists, they look at a cell and they think that's a machine designed to replicate. But no, no, no. I look at it and I'd say that's a machine designed to die right on time. Really, every one of our cells, aging and death, is built into every organism. So it was very important for evolution to keep selecting for this characteristic. And so you're worried what might happen if we overcome it. Yeah, well, first of all, it's going to happen. Whether we like it or not, aging can be cured and will be cured. The only question is whether, we're going to be the ones, the generation that's experiencing this, and it's going to change everything. So you're right to be worried, but it's going to happen, and we just need to start worrying about, how to proceed from here.
So when I say I'm worried about it, just to be clear, I don't mean I'm worried about it because it's going to lead to some sort of population problem or a resource access problem. I'm worried about it from the standpoint of the individual, the standpoint of a human being going through life. I feel that if I were to arrest my development at a particular point in my age in process, as much as I, yearn for the strength of youth and all those sorts of cliches, right? Okay, what I'm actually doing is I'm cutting myself off from the next chapter in my existence, whatever that may be after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns.
Oh,
All
I
right, so when you're talking about potential immortality, you're talking about something which I think could be highly dangerous to what it means to lead a human life. So maybe I
yeah,
could put it. So
it's
I mean,
it's
you'll forgive me if I seem polemical, right? But I mean, how do you understand death, right? I mean, it's a personal question, I suppose. And so, like, how do I understand death? Not that I'm interested in dying anytime soon, but I understand it as something which needs to be integrated into my experience. And if I were to fail in affecting the task of that integration, if I was to presume that I'm here for 793 years, that would be deleterious to my navigation of my relationships with other people, with the world, and so on. It seems that the fact that we are mortal ramifies almost essentially to how we interact with other human beings. So that is, of course, my premise. I'm not pretending that it's been demonstrated. I'm asking you, how do you deal with that? How do you frame mortality? How does your death ramify for how you think life should be undertaken?
Yeah, a small change in your worldview can lead to a large change in behavior. And I think you're at the heart of the issue of why, I don't know if I made it clear, but a lot of people are very antagonistic to this, not only longevity, aging research. My degree is not in biology. I switched in biology because I realized no one was even interested. And they were very antagonistic to trying to cure aging, because death is built into their worldview, right? All of society is really a death cope. And once you start down this path and you realize aging can be cured, I mean, as you said, you really defined yourself for the fact that you're going to die at 80. And it's just you, and you've defined your whole worldview assuming death is inevitable, but it's just wrong. Death is not inevitable. Many organisms don't age, and there's no reason you can't just keep getting stronger and hardier with each passing year. It's just a fact. Just like one plus 1 is 2. It's just a fact. And once you
I don't think it's
understand
just a
that,
fact, respectfully. Respectively, I don't think it's just a fact.
death is not inevitable. That's not a fact.
That is not a fact.
You can just
Death
keep
is
going on.
inevitable.
No, no,
Death
no,
is
no.
inevitable.
There's no reason to think that. You can just keep going
There,
on
all
indefinitely.
right. So even if for the moment, by the way, we abstract from the question of the distinction between organic and inorganic materiality, it is an element of the universe at large, the fact of transience, ephemerality, change.
Like heat death of the
Stars live
universe.
and die. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So transience is itself, impermanence is itself seemingly an almost well, if not in fact, an indelible aspect of reality. So that's before we even turn specifically to the question of living organisms, the distinction between life and non-living and non-living matter, whatever. So one significant obstacle, I would posit, David, to your resistance um, toward the proposition that death is inevitable is the fact of just basic change. Okay, that this seems component to the cosmos on a very fundamental level. Now, you might say that I have changed the terrain of the discussion in an unfair fashion.
No, no, it's fine.
So because what one might posit is that with living phenomena, you actually find a very curious, curious is an inadequate word, but a very different sort of thing than generally goes on in the vast cosmos at large, because life seems to violate the second law of thermodynamics by exhibiting a capacity for increasing complexity of organization despite energetic cost in a way that um, would not be predictable in any understandable way from the laws of physics. The life could not be produced from what we know from physics. Like we would not, if you had all the laws of physics, you would not be able to infer from them the phenomenon of living organisms, even on the most basic level. They violate those principles. So you could say that when you enter into living, I just want to acknowledge that it's not straightforward. Okay, so you could say that death is a signal that you are participating in non-material in non-living. You're using a standard of inorganic materiality, but life has a capacity to transcend the transient aspects of inorganic materiality in a way that we're not appreciating. I don't know. I'm trying to anticipate. Whatever. I'm talking a lot. Should let you talk more. So
Yeah, again, we don't know why organisms age. We don't know why organisms sleep. And we don't even know what to do about dry skin. So, we certainly don't understand nature of the universe, transient nature of the universe. Don't, again, these things, gotta have a little, humility when we don't understand the nature of the universe. But, if that's what's get you down, then it's a fact that death is not inevitable in 10,000 years. If, let's keep it, I want to talk about time scales of solar systems. It's not, it's
okay.
just a fact. That's a fact.
Well,
Okay. It's
I
not
mean,
inevitable in 10,000 years. And your worldview is based fundamentally on the fact that it is, and it's just wrong. And once you internalize that, you cannot see the world in any other way. Just like 1 and 1 is 2. You
but
can't go around pretending
I
it's
mean,
3.
right. So I'm stipulating that if death was evitable, if I stipulate that death is something that we can avoid for the sake of the conversation, I can stipulate that point. And then what I'm saying is that our nature, what we are fundamentally, would be disfigured in a grievous way because I believe that
That's what
moving.
it's true.
Okay.
It's
All
true.
right.
It's a fact. Right? And it does, I mean, your whole worldview is based in a falsehood, and that is true. and it might upset your whole worldview, and it really does, but it's true nonetheless.
So you believe in your own potential immortality.
Yes,
And what would that mean for you?
it means not dying.
Right. Well, I
Just keep
mean, yeah,
going on indefinitely.
right. But it seems to me that is I I'm looking for the right words, right? I feel that
It's a lot of stuff to
the
do.
meaning I feel that the meaning of life in some sense will always be accessed within something like a narrative structure.
The meaning of life is just to keep
Or
going, to not die, keep on existing.
no, it can't just be that, David.
What
Or
else
is
is
that
there? If you die, you're dirt. Gotta keep going.
well, first of all, I don't think that that's necessarily the end of the story because it's not transparent to me that who and what I am can be reduced to my biology, right? It strikes me that who and what I am and who and what you are and what we all are, and I mean that quite inclusively, even paramecia, is more than what can be mapped by physicality, materiality, this
It's
coarse flesh.
possible, but there's really no
Uh,
evidence there's anything more. You're just a collection of cells.
well, I would resist the suggestion pretty mightily that there is no evidence. I mean, the historically novel, the radical position is actually the one that you're taking, the reductive position that we're just the sum of our parts. I have kind of, if you like, a more gestalt sense of how the world operates, um, and uh, I don't think that we're just the sum of our parts. And insofar as we are made up of parts, their significance is inherited from something which transcends them as parts. So, like a bicycle is made up of so many parts. The gear system of the bicycle, however, inherits its identity as a gear system from the fact that it's part of the bicycle. Just like your heart inherits its significance as your heart because it's part of a broader, more complex system that can never be derived by the heart itself, isolated from the rest of your organism, and so on and so forth up the chain. So our body has a significance as, which is inherited from something which transcends the body. And my concern would be that by taking a stalwartly reductionist view that characterizes our existence as reducible to its material substrate, what you're effectively doing is cutting yourself off from that aspect of reality from which the material substrate actually inherits its own meaning and significance. And I think that the process of which is consummated by the fact that I imagine that this is difficult for you to hear. The suggestion that death is a consummation um, is is part of a broader process, almost a narrative process, whereby we are coming into contact with a higher order of meaning than that which we can uh, extrude from simply the atoms in the void. All right. Now, I understand that what we have here between us is a very fundamental difference, right? Because what your suggestion is, I imagine what you're going to suggest is, Tom, I feel that your perspective that you're articulating is reflective of you having been co opted by a Thanatic, the cult of Thanos, right? Okay, you're right. Not the Marvel character, but the Greek god Thanos, god of death, as opposed to Eros, the life drive
It's
and the
death
death
cope. It's
drive, the
all
love
death cope.
drive. But all right, I'm almost drawn to sort of like in the world you're conjuring. I'm afraid, David, is sketched in Macbeth and in other places. But what really comes to mind is the utterance of Macbeth. Tomorrow, tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps through this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have but lighted fools the way to a dusty death, and so on. And you see, if this is it, if this is as good as it gets, if there's
Wait, say the
nothing
quote. Say the
beyond,
quote again. Macbeth. What is this after he killed the king? What?
yeah, this is
Remind me.
after. This is toward the end of the play.
Say the
And
quote.
so tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps through this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have but lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle, life is but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard to no more. It is a
Oh yeah, it
tale
is. He is
told by
talking
the
about
idiot,
death.
full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. What he's talking about is a life without meaning. He's talking about a life without a specific purpose or end or destiny, in which everything does become this repetition, this tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. So, what I'm suggesting is that meaning, if meaning is integral to what it is to be alive, to be fulfilled as a human being, is intimately connected to something like death, if not death itself. And that if we um, reject to a relationship with our own death and defining it in one way or the other, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to end up like Macbeth. All right.
What
Well,
happened
I
to
mean,
Macbeth in the end?
right. That, so
Did
because
Macbeth die?
he was killed in
Oh.
the end, and in a kind of redemptive way, right? But you see, his error was that he listened to the counsel of Lady Macbeth. This
Oh,
is
it was he the one? No man born of woman. Was that him? Can kill me.
no, I that is I think a different. I'm not familiar that. I think that you're referring to something from J.R.R. Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings, where they were one of the ring bearers, or not ring bearers, the ring wraiths. One of them, their head of them, is prophesied to be immortal, but he ends up getting killed by a woman because the prophecy says no man born. But that's neither here nor there,
Uh,
right? I might be missing. There might be another line somewhere in Shakespeare to that effect. I mean, there's plenty of Shakespeare. We could talk about him all night. We could, talk about because death, like right, doctor. But
Repetition is good. Tomorrow, tomorrow,
uh,
tomorrow sounds great. We need more tomorrows. Repetition is
yeah,
great for
but
learning.
tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, if tomorrow is the same as today, is the same as
It's good.
yesterday.
Keep
No,
doing it.
it's
You know,
monotonous. It's
I
monotonous.
taught calculus for like 8 years and I was still learning new things. His repetition is
But
great.
you want to move beyond repetition. You don't want mere repetition. Mere repetition
It's not as
is
bad as it sounds. This is, again, it's death cope, Tom.
all right. So
It-
why
there's something going on. I have
now
the
like what
humility
let me
to
ask you this.
accept.
Let me ask you a different question. All right, let's we're gonna at least implicitly, well explicitly, but I don't know if we can actually bracket it all together. And I let me ask you, uh, what does it mean to grow as a human being? And I don't mean like, oh, I don't mean like biologically grow, like, oh, now I'm a teenager and then I get out puberty and I realize myself as, as replicant capable, okay, organism or something like that. I mean, what does it mean to become better tomorrow than you were today? right?
Okay, you're
It's
asking me.
possible to be, or let me put it more concisely. Is it possible for me to be better tomorrow than I was today?
Yes, you learn more, I'd say. Learning more should be your goal.
But to learn, does that not always entail or often entail surrendering something to which I was previously attached?
No, not always. It could, I guess, I could teach you something, but it doesn't have to be. You can learn, you know, about the complex numbers. You don't have to, I guess you have to surrender time.
But you see,
Yeah,
there's
but
always a letting go. To move forward from one point to another, there seems to me to always be a letting go.
okay.
On a broader scale, for example, we could be attached to Newtonian mechanics, but that would inhibit the insight of Einsteinian mechanics. So, in order to move from one paradigm to another, you have to surrender the former paradigm.
Yep. Well, yeah, you have to eliminate your biases. Oh, that's important. Yes. I see what you're
And
saying.
or you could also look at it. I mean, that's sort of a clinical example. We could talk about the process of emotional maturity and what does it mean to get to a place where certain things that used to bring you to problematic anger no longer bring you to problematic anger? What's going on there? And I mean, I guess I have my answers. I should stop saying my answers. I could ask you.
Yeah, I mean, with more time, you'll have more, just like, your perspective when you were 20 years old is nowhere near as wise as it is now. When you're 1,000 years old, you're going to be much, much wiser and much smarter. So you're just going to keep growing and maturing. Yeah, you're going to look back at yourself and you're going to feel sorry for someone that never made it to year 500, because everyone knows that's when you really understand the solar system. So you're just going to keep going with more time, more repetition, more learning. You'll become, a really smart guy.
I don't think it's just an additive process though. So the like implicit in your characterization is that learning is just
Learning is additive.
it's
Yep. No,
cumulative.
it's,
I don't
yep.
think it is. I don't think it is just additive. There's an additive dimension to it, but there's also something which transcends what could be arithmetically defined. We already sort of alluded to that by my question of the necessity of
It's
surrender.
funny, one of my degrees in math, one of the projects I was working on as an undergrad was I did game theory. Develop a game in which knowing more information hurts you. It's actually very hard. Let's say I bet you couldn't do it. Try to develop a game in which knowing more information hurts you. You can't. Knowledge is always good. It's always additive. More knowledge is always better.
But growth is not just the function of information, right? It's also integrating that information in a meaningful way into the conduct of your person.
Well, you could think of it as just more information. Think of it that way.
I don't think I can. I mean,
All right, what
I
is
could
it?
do, but it would be very sort of torturous to try and affect that translation. It's just, to go back to bicycle examples, I can describe discursively what's involved in riding a bicycle, but to actually ride the bicycle, you have to get on it and fall down and so forth. Now, you might counter that that's still information. It's
Yeah,
just
it's information.
information in a different mode than that which can be
And we
discursively
get,
relayed.
without aging, you have more time to do that. I get what you're saying.
May
Young.
be something of an impasse here. Um, I don't. So like I'm not. I hope I don't seem frustrating
No,
in
no,
my.
let's work through it. Yeah, I think maybe this is what you're saying. Young kids, they run around. Why do they run around and play? Because they're programmed to want to run around and play.
I
And
don't even
old,
like that language of programming. By the way, okay, just that's a metaphor that I think is very problematic. just like you're saying, you're looking at a cell as a machine. Don't think we're machines. We're not machines. Machines are derivative. The mechanistic metaphor is a heuristic, useful in certain limited terrains, but I think it's ultimately misleading because it's not teleological. It doesn't have a sense of purpose beyond very limited functionalism. And I don't think functionalism is the whole story. But
Humans are just another point on this evolutionary tree. Does a beetle have a purpose in your worldview?
yes,
Oh, beetle does have a purpose. Does cell and the bacteria have a purpose?
something like a purpose. But I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be able to access or definitively rely. I mean, to me, even an electron in a very removed way participates in this process. I'm not even speaking
Something's
personally.
going
Speaking
on.
personally. Okay.
The universe is moving in some, we look at the fossil record, organisms are getting more and more complex and ecosystems are getting more diversified. There does seem to be something going on. I admit that. There might be some purpose, something we don't understand, but you should be careful. Don't, it's really just death cope if you're attaching. It's okay that I'm going to march toward oblivion because there might be some larger purpose. Yeah, there might be some larger purpose, and you play the same role as that rock and that cockroach and that fish over there. Okay, but you could do more. We have a nice opportunity we live in a special time, an exciting time where we could be more than just cockroaches. We can cure aging, and then we'll have the time to actually figure out what's going on and if there is indeed purpose and what direction is evolution going. What are the units of evolution? We cannot figure this out with just 80 years. So these are
Well,
great questions you're bringing up, but you will never understand your purpose if you become dirt pretty soon. So first, whatever your goal is, whatever
so
meaning, you got to cure aging first.
actually, I must respectfully disagree on a few different points. All right. One being that it seems that for the vast majority of people, death is a practical reality. And you, uh, what is
Doesn't
your,
have to be.
well, that may be, okay, but what is your answer to those people in terms of the meaning of their existence?
Yeah, well,
I'm not trying to be harsh. I know that's like a harsh question, but I mean, that's a serious question.
once you realize that death is not inevitable, you realize, the millions of years that you're giving up if you die, and it really is, it is a shame. Um, but no one needs to die. Once people start prioritizing this research, there's many things we could do. There are things that we could do today to prevent anyone from dying.
And
I, you know,
the
I
other point, by the
also
way, is that you said roughly that if we had more time, we could figure out what was going on. And in terms of, what's the big plan? What's the cosmic design or what have you, right?
wait, go
And
back.
what I,
You're saying a lot of people are going to die. Well, first of all, everything I'm saying is true.
right, that doesn't seem like,
It's
nor
not
is it,
inevitable that you have to die in 10,000 years. That's just a fact. It's just truth. Even if it's true that a bunch of people will die, yeah, I'm saying the truth, and you've based your worldview on a falsehood. And I just want to say what I was referring to before. We could freeze, people might find cryogenics a little too cringe. Hate to get too cringe, but we can freeze hamsters. We can freeze small mammals and we can keep them frozen for weeks and then we can unfreeze them and we can bring them back and they live their normal life course. So there's a lot of evidence to say when frozen, there's no deterioration. And I say it very seriously. If we start doing this, no one has to, when the MDs declare them legally dead, it doesn't mean they're biologically dead. We take their organs, put them into other people, the organs live a normal life course. They're not biologically dead. No one needs to biologically die. It's really, a death worshiping worldview that prevents us from doing this. And maybe you're starting to see the risk, right? What they're giving up is a lot. It's everything. And with this, we have the technology now to start freezing people instead of burying them and start prioritizing aging research. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I don't have an immediate response to that, right? What I was going to say a few minutes ago was that it seems to me that the answers, the most important answers are actually already in our possession. And by the most important answers, what I mean is a commitment to terms like kindness and generosity and love and compassion and openness to the miracle of the present moment of what's right here, right now, and abiding in that space with full presence. To me, these are the quote unquote answers. So to call them answers is really inadequate because they are values which derive from a different register of consideration than that of mere knowledge.
I have a pill. It could double your lifespan. Are you taking it?
I don't think I could actually.
All right. Yeah, because you
That's
got
not like
everything. You got everything
I
that's
mean,
important.
well, I mean, it would be, I'm not, when I say that, David, I'm not going to say, oh, well, I'm not tempted. Okay. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that there isn't something alluring and seductive about, or even within a limited span, the notion of some extension of life. Okay. I'm not a sadist that doesn't believe that we should do what we can to, exhibit positive therapies to mitigate people's unnecessary suffering. But what I am saying is that the exclusion of death from the frame within which we situate the meaning of life uh, misunderstands life and what it is to be alive. To live is to be presented, in my view, with the challenge of integrating the fact of death into the fact of your life. And to just exclude that is, I think, maybe to put it another way, is that meaning is connected to finitude in a way which the exclusion of death perhaps does not appreciate.
It's the fact. You do not have to be dirt in 10,000 years. That is a fact. You need to
I
accept
also
that
don't think
into.
that I'm just death, but I'm not just dirt. I'm more than that. And
All right, your
clearly,
body does
I
not
can't
have to
really.
be dirt. Your body does not have to be dirt in 10,000 years. That's a fact. All right, you can say, somehow that you're challenged to accept your death, which is, not inevitable, just a fact, gives you meaning, and I'm taking away that meaning. All right, I guess,
Look,
but
David, I know what you mean, but it is important, I think, to acknowledge that for the death for us is a fact. Okay,
it's
I am
not.
not
That's
going.
what I'm
I'm
saying.
not
It's
going
just
to.
not a fact. It's just wrong.
You, I,
Eventually, aging will be cured. It will happen. It's not, someone is going to live to 10,000 years. It's going to happen.
no, I don't think it will. I think by the time you got to 200, you would realize that a grievous error had been perpetrated. I don't think anyone would ever want to live.
Okay, but
But,
it won't
I
be
mean,
of natural causes.
but,
Wait, you think society will have to kill people? Yeah, it's gonna change everything. That's a little
No, that's
dystopian.
not where I was going. Okay, but I mean that is implicit in the logic of what you're saying, because it does open up other issues around
It opens up a lot
resource
of issues.
efficient and all that sort of thing. Okay, but it's also expressive of a profound hubris, in my view, which is excluding the spiritual dimension of what we are as human beings. I mean,
It's a
these are axiomatic issues, and I don't know. Maybe it's something of a
You've
momentary.
defined your humanity in such a way that assumes that your body's going to be dirt in 10,000 years. And I'm glad you recognize that, but it's wrong. It's your worldview is based on a falsehood. And and I think that's why a lot of people are antagonistic to it, but it's a fact. It's just a fact, right? There's no reason we can't keep on, our bodies can't keep repairing themselves for 10,000 years. That's a fact. And they're going to figure out how to do that pretty soon. In the next 500 years, I think I think most people would agree they're going to figure out how. And we're going to have to start worrying about, should we do this and how should society deal with this?
Well, we
But
definitely shouldn't do it, in my view, just to be. But I've already put my cards on the table. But
uh,
I think I'm not even. I'm just really. I'm trying to focus on the personal significance of a project like this. I'm not really rising to the level of its societal implications. I think that existentially, that is, in terms of how you deal with being in this, what does it mean to be a human being? It's not just a matter of managing your biology and eating the right foods and taking the right therapies and all that kind of thing, right? That is derivative, that is secondary, that is not what it is to be alive. Okay. And uh,
for most people, that's what it is to be alive. Is that what it is to be alive for a dog, for example?
um, I think in the case of dogs, it's not quite exhaustive. I think even dogs have a sense of incipient transcendence. I think anything that can exhibit playfulness has a capacity to exhibit transcendence.
Yeah, you can transcend your human
But,
condition. You have that. I agree. We should transcend
well,
it.
I believe that death is the pathway to that transcendence. And not just your physical death. You have to die to who you were in order to be who you are today, which is painful, but in my view, emotional reality.
Wait, say it again. I have to die something who I was. Say that again.
Yeah, you have to let go of who you were to be who you are today and to who you're going to be tomorrow. Right? You had attachments to things when you
Oh,
were
it's a
15 years old.
different death. Okay.
But I actually think that, it speaks to what death is in a more ultimate sense, that it's not just a metaphor. It's that this process of what I'm submitting is the
Do you
process
think
of
humans
growth.
die for the same reason other animals die? It's part of
Right,
your
more or
some
less, more or
transcendence
less.
process.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
so the worms have some transcendence, higher purpose transcendence process, and we have our higher purpose transcendence process. All right,
Now, I
but
don't, well, just to be clear, I can't prove that, and I'm not pretending to prove it. It's a commitment. It's an act of faith to make that assertion. Okay. Maybe you think it's ridiculous, and that's your prerogative. Okay. But if it is ridiculous, it's an absurdity which is predicated upon the quality of my own experience in life and that of many, many others over the centuries and millennia. So, uh, I mean, you could say that I'm
all those
that
guys that
maybe.
believed in the past, they're dirt now. Forget them.
Well, I don't.
It's irrelevant.
See,
We have
that's
exciting times.
All
We
right.
can,
Well,
it doesn't have to be us.
they're not just, I don't think that I don't think it's that simple, David. I don't think that they're necessarily just dirt.
Their
But
bodies are dirt.
their bodies are dirt, but we're not just our bodies. All right. That's my, and even, well, anyway, we should perhaps, I'm sorry, because we wrap it up for the moment. We can do another one, right? I'm not pretending that we've come to any solutions here. Okay.
No,
I'm
but
just,
very
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I know.
okay.
Yeah, I know it could be very, I'm challenging people's worldviews. People are very antagonistic. Yeah, thank you so much for,
Well, I hope
having
I
me on
haven't
here.
seemed unduly combative, even though I disagree.
No,
But
I've enjoyed this.
but well, I guess we'll close it up for the time being. All right. But we'll do another one. So, if you wish,
Yep, that would be
um,
great.
and
Anytime.
we'll try and get some go. Probably play some go here soon. I still haven't played you yet, but we'll.
Yeah. Did I tell you? Yeah, I'm going. My next conference is gonna be in Chicago. I'm actually gonna spend next semester in Chicago, so we gotta play Go before I leave.
Well, when are you leaving?
I'm actually I'm actually leaving on next Thursday, so I'll be there
Okay.
next Monday at the Go Club.
Okay. Well, I'll get a game in between then and now. Then. So.
Okay.
Well, thank you, David, and we'll be in touch. And
Okay.
ciao for now, and thanks for being on.
All
So,
right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
you too. All right, bye.
Bye.